Hogs and Horns all week here on ESPN Arkansas, brought to you by Crane Hyundai of Fayetteville at 1919 West Foxglove Drive, cranehyundaioffayetteville.com. We'll get into that here with Aaron Torres of Aaron Torres Sports Media of Fox Sports Radio and the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. AT, this is kind of feels like, I mean, there really isn't a bigger game in the country in the evening tomorrow than Arkansas versus Texas. So we've got the spotlight on Fayetteville. SEC Nation is here, and should be a pretty good game. And I know you're going to refer to them as your Razorbacks this weekend, right?
First off, wow, Phil just throwing dirt on Jim Harbaugh's grave. My goodness. God, man, Phil, that was rude. No, it's a big one, man. This is a big one. So first of all,
come on.
Well, I'll say this: Harbaugh, if he wants any kind of, any kind of goodwill in that fan base, he better win pretty easily tomorrow. I'm with you on that, Drew. No, Phil, as it pertains to our Hogs, yeah, I'm excited, man. I mean, I'm really excited. You know, obviously, look, I'll say this though. I will say this: is that I know it's like a tongue-in-cheek. Every time Texas has a nice win, is Texas back? Like, they were one of the few teams that I actually thought looked better than I was expecting last week. Now, there were a lot that looked worse, most notably LSU. But in terms of teams that I thought looked better than I was expecting, it was basically UCLA, maybe Florida State, and Texas. And so, you know, I'm just so curious to see how they respond in a road environment. Hostile environment. I know you guys will be there, but it's not as though they didn't beat a good team last week. And so, obviously, with Arkansas, you got to clean up some of the stuff last week. I know that KJ Jefferson didn't have the best game. I know they pulled away late. But, yeah, you talk about a game that there's going to have a lot of eyeballs on, especially now as Texas gets set to eventually move to the SEC. We got some Big 12 news this morning. You know, it's a big one. It's a big one. I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited that the eyes of college football will be down there in Fayetteville, and I know that I'll be watching from the Fox Sports Radio studios.
My thought yesterday was that it's supposed to be Big 12 officials that are working the game tomorrow, AT, and you know, usually you'd think, oh gosh, it's Big 12 officials, they're going to give Texas all the calls. No way, man. They got to give Texas none of the calls. The way they're looking at it, Arkansas is going to get them all, and now these officials will all be leaning towards Cincy and BYU and Houston and all that. It sounds like, I mean, I really thought the Big 12 was going to die. I think it was going to end up going the way of the Big East. But it's found a way to I don't know if I'd say, like, replace necessarily what they've lost in terms of, you know, in terms of the size of the schools. But, I mean, they're bringing in 4 decent schools when it comes to football.
Left one out, but that's fine.
Sorry, Drew. I'll say this, like, it's weird, you know, I kind of did some reaction on today's podcast. I have mixed emotions, Phil, because, you look at the schools, I mean, BYU's obviously coming off an incredible year, had the number 2 pick in the draft, and this is just from football. Basketball, it's the same deal. Houston was in a Final Four, et cetera. But, you know, from a football perspective, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston have all played in a major bowl game in the last 5 years. Houston and Cincinnati won said bowl game. And so on the one hand, like, I think you can actually argue the Big 12 is maybe a little bit more deeper in football right now than it would have been had Texas and Oklahoma stayed. Certainly the big brands aren't there. But, Phil, I also look at it from the other perspective as well, and it's kind of what you hinted at there is I don't know that from a what's the word I'm looking for, cachet perspective, national respect perspective. Like, I don't know that it does it, right? And it's weird because Cincinnati's a top 10 team. Central Florida, we know, is a sleeping giant. We'll see if Gus Malzahn's the guy there. But I don't know, Phil. It's that weird thing. They had to do something. I think they did about as well as they did. But I don't think, you know, whoever is the quote-unquote Big 12 champ in 2025, if the SEC is matched up with them in the playoff, people are, you know, you got to watch out for those Big 12 teams. Big 12's really coming on strong. So it's just one of those weird ones. I get they had to do it. They did about as well as they could, all things considered. But it's just a weird one to me, Phil. You know, it's one of those, like, I know I'm supposed to have a strong opinion on everything. Like, this is just one, like, I get why it was done. I don't know that I feel like, oh, my goodness, the Big 12, they're totally on the same level as the Big 10 and the SEC and all those schools. I'll cover.
Yeah, I mean, unless you've been nose of the grindstone watching AAC football and Group of 5 football, it really doesn't have the cliche, the name power of, you know, when SEC brings in Texas and Oklahoma. The one out of the 4 that really does puzzle me And I get Houston's coming off the Final Four, but we all know college expansion and everything else in college athletics is driven by football. Yes, was Houston a good program when we started the CFP? Did they play in a New Year's Six Bowl? Yes. That was also set 6-7 years ago. Since Dana Holgorsen has taken over that program, they've been trending down every single year, and I think that's the complaint I have, a lot of other people have, when their school got passed up, is if we're going off the current state of these programs right now, why is Houston in? And just for the fact that the fan base has never that city has never supported Houston. I mean, whether it's outside of Phi Slamma Jamma, they could not care less about the University of Houston in the actual city.
Phil, you'll have to forgive me. I got a taste in my mouth. That tastes like sour grapes. Just say it, Drew. Just say it. It tastes like sour grapes to me. No, man, I get it from Memphis's perspective. You know, Memphis obviously trending upwards in basketball and football. They've had a ton of success. You know, listen, what I would say is, like, I just think it's interesting, the conversation. So what I think, Drew, is in a broader perspective, I think the Big 12 was reactionary to kind of try to solidify themselves. I don't know that they really did it. I think they did it for a solidification of the previous 8 more than they did because they were super excited to bring any of those teams into that league. And that's what I think, you know, the prevailing lesson from the Texas-Oklahoma move was. I said it at the time. Texas and Oklahoma were leaving because they didn't feel like those other 8 schools brought any TV value to their existing contract. They wanted more money. They wanted more prestige, and there was no real way to replace them. And so it's been interesting in this round of realignment. The last round of realignment, I know it's been talked about a ton, but it was about cable boxes. It was about expanding the new footprints for the SEC. It was going to Texas. It was going to Missouri. But this round, it really feels like if you can't get those big brands, it doesn't really make sense to expand just for the sake of expanding, which is why the Big Ten didn't have any interest in the Big 12 schools. The Pac-12 didn't have any interest in the Big 12 schools. And so, Drew, it just speaks to the broader point of, you know, again, it's one I feel weird about because I understand why the Big 12 made the decision that they did, but I think they just did it to protect those other 8 schools more than they did because they really believe that those other schools are going to make them more money, bring them more cachet, things like that.
Now, I would say that flavor you had in your mouth there, Aaron, was not just sour grapes. It was a big blue sour ball with the logo of the Memphis Tigers right there on it. That's what you're tasting. So, all right. You know, this week, though, you don't have the best, like, matchups this weekend, at least not in terms of, well, I'll use your term, cachet. Iowa State is a very good game. Oregon-Ohio State at least brings maybe the best team out of the Pac-12 to a national championship contender and gives Oregon, you know, their shot if they're going to do it. Then, you know, but I think other than that, you know, Arkansas, Texas really is right there. And as I read through your website, I love the sarcasm that you put here about Washington, Michigan. The game of the day.
Yeah.
That's just dull. That's a dull one.
Well, I'll say this, Phil. You know, all I'll say pretty simply is this, is that the matchups themselves are definitely not as sexy as week 1. I do think, though, there is an element of show me what you got this weekend, right? And you know, and this is the great thing that I love about college football. We spent all off season, you know, thinking about these teams and what does it mean and all this stuff. Then you get to week 1 and you overreact. Well, now it's got to show me, Tom, right? Jim Harbaugh, as an example. You know, first of all, Texas, right? Texas, Steve Sarkisian, he's new blood. We're going to the SEC. It's a new world. Well, you know, you go to the SEC, you're supposed to beat Arkansas, and that's no disrespect to the Razorbacks fans that are listening across the state right now. You're supposed to beat Arkansas. So show me, Texas, are you really ready for the SEC? Or are you going to go to a road venue and get physically, you know, we know Sam Pittman's teams are physical, they're tough, all that stuff. You know, with Jim Harbaugh, he revamped his staff. He's claiming that last year was because of COVID and not because he's lost the program. Well, as I said a minute ago, take care of Washington. This is a game that, as Drew referenced, Washington stinks. They were overrated. They were terrible against Montana. Go ahead and prove it. Oregon, you know, UCLA held up their end of the bargain. Oregon, you want to be in that big boys club competing for college football playoff berths every year? Go prove it. Win at the Horseshoe at the very least. Be competitive. Iowa State. You think you're a playoff contender? You almost lost to the FCS team last week. Again, show it. Cross-state rival in your home venue. That's what a great program does, is take care of their rivalry. So I'm intrigued, not because, anything has the cachet of Clemson, Georgia, intrigue of Alabama, Miami, but I do think there's a lot of kind of like, okay, you've been telling me all offseason that X, Y, and Z is going to happen. It's time to show me.
I like how you're challenging them. That it definitely presents things in the right fashion. And honestly,
like
I feel the
like
same way.
Kirk Cousins, there you
But
go.
I feel the same way. You just said it. I feel the same way about Arkansas football. And we'll end on this note here. We've got all this cautious optimism about the program being in the right direction. This is the moment to show it early in year 2 before you play a single SEC team. Tomorrow is a show it Saturday for this Arkansas football team on national television with a sold-out crowd against a hated rival.
It's a great point, Phil. And, obviously, look, you guys, I know the history of the rivalry better than I do. But, you just talk about having momentum going into SEC play, and we know how tough the SEC West is. So many good teams. And so, but yeah, you have some momentum. And then it's exactly like you said, Phil. Arkansas starts 3-3 last year. Everybody's fired up. The lack of depth, injuries, a few different things play a role in the struggles down the stretch. But, listen, we all came out of last year saying last year was a success. SEC-only schedule. You finished 3-7. You get a bunch of wins. And there was a few games that you easily could have won that a few things went the other way. And so you're right, Phil. Arkansas is actually as good of a metaphor for this weekend as anybody is. You took all those big steps last year. Everybody understands there's still big steps to take to catch Alabama, to catch Texas A&M, to catch Florida, Georgia, whomever. But again, Texas, good program, but they got a first-year head coach with a freshman quarterback, first career road start coming in. I know that the Vegas line says it's about a touchdown. There's no reason you can't win this game. And so I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they have to. I'm not saying the season is a failure if they don't. But I think it's a great point by you, Phil. I didn't even include Arkansas in that kind of the show-me element of this weekend. But, yeah, if you're a program taking a step forward, you got to show out. You got to look good. And you have to take care of – you have to represent the program well in a game against a Texas program that, again, is on the way up, but they're not there yet.
AT, will end it there, and you always do show out and sound good. Appreciate you, man.
I try. Thanks, fellas.
You got it. Aaron Torres from Aaron Torres Media and the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. He'll be with us next Friday when we look forward to Arkansas, Georgia Southern in a little bit of a different way than we're looking forward to Arkansas versus Texas. But, hey, Wood Motor Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram just north of Bentonville. Wood Motor Ford wants to celebrate all first responders tomorrow. They're going to be hosting their second annual First Responders Lunch at their Bella Vista location. Now more than ever, they need a pat on the back and a thank you for all that they do. So if you're a first responder, please join them this Saturday and enjoy Slim Chickens on Wood Motor Company from 11:30 until 1:30. That's Wood Motor Ford and Wood Motor Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram just north of Bentonville on Highway 71.
It's that time of the year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the football season. As always, BetOnline is your #1 spot for all of the pro and college football action this season. Get all of the updated odds, props, and contests, including the online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest, the world's largest 200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline. Here's what you have to do. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus. Take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager's going to be refunded for up to $25 for new customers only when signing up and using the promo code NFL100. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.